It's also great to be able to welcome my good friend Caroline Casey, who is the founder of the Valuable 500, and which is a leadership initiative to make sure that CEOs buy into disability inclusion, and that disability and accessibility is something that's on the board agenda. Now, obviously, this is the group that is looking towards strategic leadership in accessibility. So what could be more important to us as strategic leaders and aspiring strategic leaders than the topic of how you engage CEOs? So it's great to have Caroline here. Caroline, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Well, I mean, I can't say no to you or IAAP or Christopher Lee. Of course I'm here. But can I just say, I think we need to change our photographs. What do you think? Seriously? I think we look way too serious in those two photographs. Profile photographs need to change, for sure.
Well, I'll look something out less serious for next time. So, diving straight in, Valuable 500 does require this CEO commitment, but you make it easy for organizations to engage, because you're not actually asking for too much to begin with, because you want to set the barriers to entry relatively low. So you're talking about board reporting and a single commitment, and ideally most of the companies have at least one of these things that they're already doing. That approach has attracted some of the world's largest organizations to join, which is fantastic. But what do we now need to do to raise the bar?
Well, a few things in that one. As of this afternoon, just before I came on, we're at 394 companies around the globe, and that's companies that employ over 1,000 people, and we represent 31 countries, 56 sectors, and I think it's just under 14 million employees. It's incredibly powerful. So your question is, what do we do with that power, right? So the Valuable 500 was originally established to get the attention and intention of the CEOs. It's like the missing piece so that we could scale some of the great accessibility initiatives, leadership, and actually disability business inclusion that exist in a business. And the reason we're not seeing accelerated change or the joining of the dots or the scaling is because the leadership wasn't necessarily aware. And, you know, we had a stat that said that 54% of our leadership in our C-suite around the globe had never had a conversation about disability. So our job was to originally break that circuit with a critical mass of 500. Now we're nearly there. We have 105 places left, which is incredible. And look, we were willing to walk away at that point and say, campaign done. Here they are, and we've got some massive brands announcing in the next 2 weeks, huge brands that we've not ever really heard from disability inclusion. So why would we walk away? So our job now, which we'll be announcing in about a month, will be how do we activate this community, led and supported by the CEOs. And what we've provided for them is a transformational change program. And that change program will look at 3 internal aspects of the business that we want the CEOs to ensure there is movement on. One is around leadership itself. The second is culture. The third is brand. And then we're going to ask the community of the 500 to really use their collective influence to change the appalling situation around the lack of research and data, representation, particularly business and disability representation, and lastly, reporting, because it's a dastardly state of affairs. So that's the transformational program. And don't think that now that they're in the community and we've got them in, that the CEO no longer becomes accountable. They do. They must stand above the program of work each company will do.
Okay, so I'm going to touch on all of those points as we carry on through. You've got 394, and these, I've watched the sort of acquisition of these organizations, and it's quite clear that they sort of come in waves. Is there sort of a herd mentality amongst the CEOs that when they see others in their sector doing something, they feel compelled to engage too? Well,
you know, isn't that human nature? I'm not sure that's just about leaders, is it? that's what's made first few followers of the Valuable 500. I mean, that's why we always will give credit to that first group, of which Atos was one of, and all our partners, by the way, who helped make this happen, and Access Chat being one of our partners as well. We didn't do this on our own. But what I will say is, no doubt, at the beginning, people were like, yeah, the Valuable 500, aren't they crazy? There's no way 500 CEOs are going to do this. And now, as we stand at 394, I believe when we close this community, people will not be looking at the list to see who's on this community. They're going to be looking to see who's not. And that feeling is, that's happening. And you're right, the waves come around very important, say, press announcements, or around International Day of People with Disabilities. That was a big day for companies to go, you know what, let's use this moment to really look at how we can engage. And I think what's happening, Neil, particularly because of COVID, is the business world is more aware they don't want to react to the space of accessibility, inclusion, and disability in the way they've been reacting to other issues. They want to future-proof businesses. They want to learn in a safe environment. They want to share best practice. And actually, they know now it's not about if we do this. This is about when we do it. And I really feel that change happening, and leaders are now speaking to leaders.
Okay, so if we already know it's about when we do it, what role can the strategic leaders and, as I said, the aspiring strategic leaders play in determining how we do it? So how can we as accessibility leaders ensure that the CEOs, when they're looking at each other and the business community, are emulating the right things and the right leaders and the right practices?
Well, firstly, I just want to say to anybody who's in the world of accessibility, particularly and inclusive digital communication, you're probably in one of the most powerful moments ever. And I think finally what's happening, the idea that accessibility is a nice to have has just been completely transformed. And we all know that. So how do you use this moment? I think that's really it. How do we use the moment? Because I think there's two roles within the business now that are going to radically transform, is the skill and ability around accessibility and inclusion, and where that sits in the business. And secondly, the issue of inclusion and diversity. And I think these roles will now be more even senior, and particularly around diversity and inclusion, than they were before. But the big piece is that we need to, the companies that are doing this right, Neil, you know this better than anybody, are the company that are putting the emphasis on the importance of that role and the access of that person and that role to hit the board and to hit the CEO. So that's where we will point to. So Salesforce, in joining the Valuable 500, appointed a accessibility officer that reports directly to Mark Benioff, that reports to the board, emulating very much what Jenny Fleury and the relationship she has with Satya, looking at your own ability to drive influence in Atos. That's where we say the game changing is, the importance to which. The second thing that we would look to is, who are the organizations partnering with? So the CEOs often have absolutely no idea, or the leadership have no idea what really good looks like. And I would never put a CEO, with the exception of maybe a few, onto a stage to speak of people like Christopher Patno. I'd come to people like you, and I'd ask you, and who are you referring to, and who are your partners? And it's one of the reasons the IAAP are very much one of our partners in phase 2. The businesses are looking to each other to know who you are working with. And it's the right experience, it is the right people, and it is the right partnerships that we need to start highlighting, because then we will see the work being done correctly.
Okay, so like you've already highlighted, that there are very few people in positions like myself or Jenny Fleury or with direct access to the CEO. That does need to change, because the complexity of the programs that we're going to have to run if we're to be successful is immense, and requires, you know, this kind of really serious amount of sort of corporate oversight and you know, influence and power within an organization for it to work. Because it's great to give someone a title, but without, if that's a title without real power and influence and ability to make stuff happen, then the programs will fail. So I think it's
the right financial investment. And I really, so I can't name, we've had 3 requests in the last, since Monday, from, and I mean really big organizations, and one is about the biggest events in the world, okay? And they came to us saying, we really want to be the most inclusive and most accessible event. We want to be the most inclusive and accessible company. Where do we go? And the very first thing that we will push back on is say, well, number one, are you prepared to invest in this? Number two, are you prepared to have the person to whom is going to run this program have direct access to the leadership? Because if you're not prepared for those 2 things, don't bother. You can't, it's not a nice have and it's not a wish. You must absolutely invest in the visibility with the leadership, and you must invest financially, and you must develop your team right through the organization and that pipeline of expertise. And you need to bring that talent into your business. And that's where we make the link between employment and the intelligence in the business. I mean, do you have that intelligence in your business? Do you have people with different lived experience who have skills around accessibility to help formulate the strategy and deliver for you? So they're quite surprised. They come back and go, oh, you're like, yeah, like this is big move stuff. This is really different to the conversation that we had before COVID.
Yeah, and I think it can't just be a tick box exercise. I think the other thing that really will change all of this is really sort of reporting, etc. And I'll come on to that shortly. But a CEO sponsored initiative where you've got someone that's appointed needs to be accountable, and therefore there's going to be an expectation for it to have some kind of measure of success and be able to demonstrate that success. So this is something that the SLIA program is actively engaged in, is what KPIs should we have internally for our programs? How do we measure these things? And I think that, you know, this is work that some of us have done within our own organizations, but we kind of want to look at how we can harmonize this. There will always be sector by sector stuff that will differ, because, you know, what works in a tech business might not work in a manufacturing organization. But it's sort of what are the KPIs, and also not just how do we as accessibility professionals look at the KPIs, because we're going to want to look in much greater granularity than the CEOs. What do you think are the things that the CEOs are wanting to see? And also, what can we educate them as to the things that are important to see, rather than, because sometimes they might be interested in the wrong things. So, well, so how do you think we can educate them on that?
Well, I think you as a community, the first most important piece for me is you are the only people, because you're the people with the expertise, need to set one standard, honestly. And I understand we need to have the differentiator between industry. I get that. But it really is you guys coming together and you telling us how and what are the things that we need to see. I can't tell you because it's not my area of expertise. What we can help bring you is this community, this enormous, very unique community, first time built in the world, is that will you tell us what it is you know better? So that's the first piece. The second piece from our side of the house is we have to really help business understand. And this is where the leadership are listening. This is no longer, I think, about making the case for this. I think that day is over, actually. This is really about risk-proofing our business. This is taking it from niche to normal. We are in, the horse has bolted. We're off here right now. What the CEO and the board need to understand is the delivery or the effect, direct and indirectly, on the shareholder value of their organization and on their brand and on the CEO's personal brand if they do not get this right. Now, what we've also explained to the CEOs and the leadership, we don't expect you to know it all. We expect you to admit you don't know it and go out and get the help and go out and invest in the advice, like that you have done in other issues. When that lands, Neil, that's the biggest barrier right now, because there still is competing agendas that a business has. But the issue of accessible, inclusive design touches every aspect of every agenda and every function and every part of the value chain. And that's the piece the CEO needs to understand. And what I'm saying is the opportunity with this in this community right now is you are the most powerful people because of COVID. And businesses now are wanting to avoid what happened with Domino, for an example. And that happened before COVID. And now with COVID, they're like, wow. And that's what we need them to understand. The measurables, the KPIs, you need to deliver to us. We need to open their heads. You tell us what to measure.
I've seen from the Q&A, someone's actually asked to explain what the KPI acronym means, and that's key performance indicator. So
targets.
Sorry for that. We went straight into biz speak.
Corporate drivel.
Yes, sorry about that. Also the session is being recorded. So those are two of the questions from the chat. I've also posted the link to the current listing of members of the Valuable 500, because that was one of the other questions. So we've talked about the sort of internal measures. There was another question saying, what are the top 5 questions CEOs are asking you right now about accessibility and inclusion?
Oh my gosh. I'm never going to lie to anybody. Okay. So I'm going to say, this is a conversation happening with CEOs right now. We still have a piece. I think the CEOs get it, right? If I was to say to you, I had 1,000 CEOs here in the room, and will they come and be part of a community which is about collective learning, collective innovation, and we can fail together and we can achieve together? No CEO has ever said no. None. However, the business says no. So it's not the CEOs that ever say no, it's the business. And what the business we're hearing is, the questions, the very first thing they ask is, who else is in the Valuable 500? Which is to Neil's very first question, is herd mentality. The second issue is, the second question is, but we can't find them. And what they mean by them is, we can't find people with disabilities to come into our business. So that's the second one, that there is a barrier that brings people with disabilities into the business. The third area is going, we don't really know where to start and we don't really know what to do. So we're focusing on other areas. The fourth one, which is the one that is the greatest barrier for any of this, is we'd like to get our house in order before we come into this community, and what we're saying is that is actually the wrong thing to do, because it will stop you doing anything at all. And the very last question or conversation point that we have around it is, who's doing this best? They want to know who's doing it best. And what we will come back and say, there's some doing really good stuff, but nobody is amazing and perfect at all of it, because the Valuable 500 is about disability business inclusion across the full value chain. So it's about consumers and suppliers and talent and members of community and universal design and their philanthropy. It's everything. So there's some of the conversations I can let you know about. Oh, one last one is, we're doing a really good job, so we don't need to. And you're like, what do you mean you don't need to come into a community and help the business system change? Because you got to remember the Valuable 500 mission, and I mean this unapologetically, in phase 2 is absolutely to fundamentally shake up the business system, to equally include disability, strategically integrate it into its business. And that is, I have no apology for that. And so when a company says, oh, well, we're doing great things, we don't need to, I'm like, wow, yes, you do. You need to come in and share.
Yeah. And also quite often the cynic in me says, if you think you're doing great things and you can't tell me what they are, then you're probably not.
Okay, well, I wasn't going to say that, but I am nodding. Yes.
Nah. So we've talked about these the internal measures and some of the KPIs, but also moving on a little bit, and I want to talk a bit about transparency as well. I think this is really important to talk about, our, as you said, our successes, our failures. We're really proud within my own organization of our corporate social responsibility programs, where we report on CSR, sustainability, decarbonisation, and we do this in a way that's combined reporting. So that means that we don't just report our financial results, we include all of these what are called extra financial measures in our annual report, and that has a material effect on our share value, right? So so the stuff that we're doing actually really does influence the value of our company. Now, as a company that grows through acquisition, where there's stuff out in public now talking about who we're buying next, the impact of these programs on our share value impacts our ability to grow, right? However, for the most part, all of these metrics and all of these indices, GRI, CDP, all of these major sort of Dow Jones Sustainability Index, they have a little section about disability, sort of which effectively doesn't give you any metrics, just sort of says, tell us some nice stories.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry, but actually this is one of my passion points.
Yes.
And I don't want to, this, like this adage, what we don't measure, doesn't get done. Or Paul Pullman, who's the chair of the Valuable 500, what we measure, we treasure. Look, I am absolutely incensed when people say, oh, but it's just so complex and it's just so difficult. And internally, when we talk about representation of employees who have a direct connection to disability, we use the legislation as a reason not to. And when we've seen companies like Channel 4, Microsoft, M&S actually get around that with anonymous census, this is about intention. And actually, it's one of the tools we'll be bringing to the Valuable 500 community and asking them all to do is an anonymous census around this. This is really, we can can hack this problem.
Yes.
But the second one that absolutely drives me mad is how can we say we believe in sustainability if we don't believe in inclusion? And how can you say you believe in inclusion if you don't do disability? And the stat that I always bang around with the Valuable 500 is 90% of our companies claim that they are committed to inclusion and diversity, but only 4% consider disability. And maybe that is a very low figure, but how do we know otherwise? Because we're not seeing any reporting. And if you look at diversity and inclusion indexes, in 2018, McKinsey did the global report on diversity and inclusion. Was disability there? No. And so when you got in touch with them, you were like, why? Why wasn't it there? Oh, well, disability isn't a driver of business. Wow. So that kind of stuff really bothers me. So when 500, a great win with the Tortoise Responsibility Index, which was founded by James Harding, and it was really hard, but they put 5 metrics to begin with. And that makes me excited, because if we can get these metrics in, if we can start, I'm not saying they're all right, but if we don't put them in because it's just too hard to get them all right, well, that is just, we're going to self-perpetuate the problem. And if you look at what the Fortune companies are doing now with Move to Measure around racial representation, yeah, great. We need to do that. And we need to do, and we need to do, and we need to do. So it is one of the big passion projects of phase 2 of Valuable 500 is there will be never a sustainability index, a responsibility index, or a diversity and inclusion index that it is acceptable anymore not to have disability metrics. I throw that down, my gauntlet.
So, and you know that I'm fully behind this too, because it's one of my passions is the sort of economics of accessibility and sustainability. They are intertwined. So these are really important things. The example set by the Tortoise Index is important. We need to continue to work on getting our influence as users and contributors to these other indices, to make them understand the importance of reporting on these things. And then that helps us benchmark, that helps CEOs benchmark as well. So not only does it actually give power to us as the strategic leaders in accessibility, because suddenly the measure of what we're doing impacts on the value of the organization, but we can measure ourselves against other organizations. And then you could objectively say, when someone asks you, who are doing this well? Well, you can say, by these measures, X company is doing it well, Y company is doing well in this aspect, and so on and so forth. And at the moment, you can, all we're doing is giving people anecdotes. And I think that we need to move well beyond anecdotes to evidence-based stuff.
And don't get me wrong, stories are great, because I think the intersection between stats and story is the sweet point, right? But you
absolutely.
can't just have anecdotes on their own.
But we've been dining out on the anecdotes for a long time.
A long time.
So we really need the science-based, sort of fact-based stuff now. I see in the comments and the Q&A, people have been asking on metrics as well. You know, and this is from Jodie Greer. She's saying that some leaders have a big focus on metrics of how many people are already in the organization. And that her feeling is that they need to build an inclusive culture in order for people to feel confident and comfortable sharing that they have a disability. Now, this varies from country to country, because some countries you're pretty much forced to count, and others in the UK you don't have to count, and some you're not allowed to count. So then we're talking about self-identification, and that really is down to culture. So also, you know, doesn't that, if that's the only metric, doesn't it sort of limit the talent pool? How can we change the culture? And also, how can we think about other metrics? Because if we look at the gender pay gap, for example, we're not just looking at, you know, the basic gender pay gap, and we know that there is a disability employment gap, but there's also a disability pay gap, so disabled employees get paid less, and then there's also a seniority gap. And I think that these are the kind of metrics that we can look at. They're not necessarily about accessibility. Accessibility is an enabler, because if you don't have accessible systems, you don't give people the level playing field to have the opportunity to progress. But these are things that we can track as companies and as strategic leaders, where we're not just talking about, you know, the technical accessibility, whether or not something is compliant and functional, but how the organization addresses the topic as a whole. I think these are things that could be really good measures of success. Well,
first of all, I have to say I agree with Jodie. I want to say agree fully. I mean, our whole job right now is to create empowering cultures for everyone, disability or no disability. And I often re-quote this once again. Many of you have heard me say this, that, you know, we have 7% of our C-suite have lived experience of disability, but 4 out of 5 of them are hiding their disability. Like, I hit mine 20 years ago. What's that saying about the culture? So we all need to help that cultural shift happen. So these metrics, I'm really interested in. It can't just be about how many employees currently live within the business. I think some of the ones, it was Jennison Anusian, who we had interviewed with the Harkin Summit, and who still is a startling stat in America. Like, that, is it 94% or is it 96%? Apologies if I've got this wrong, you will know better than me. Websites are still inaccessible. I mean, that to me is, particularly this day and age, is what are we doing, and what kind of audit tools are we providing or ensuring, or how do we tell our CEOs and our leadership, by having the barriers, you are stopping this amount of profit into your business. You know, they talk about the click away pound. I mean, it's something like 17 billion in the UK. I mean, these are our stats that we need to be speaking to. And I think when it's termed in those kind of ways, it's not just about the employees that are living in the business, but it's what is the opportunity that is sitting here. If that we were to make our products and our services accessible, how much more consumers can we have in? And similarly, what are you keeping away? Because they're very much about business drivers. And I think that changes the conversation that we have, because disability or lived experience of disability is one of the most extraordinary untapped opportunities for innovation and growth. And we are living the evidence of that this last year. And so for me, it's what are you as a business willing to leave on the table by not making yourself accessible? They're stats that they will listen to.
Excellent. So we've got quite a lot of questions, so I'm hoping we're still all right for time. There was a question saying, are public sector and government engaged with the Valuable 500? It's a business initiative, but I'll let you explain a little bit more.
Very quickly, I'll very quickly answer this question. We get this a lot now as the visibility of the Valuable 500 is going up. People say, well, why can't government bodies not come in, or why can't small, medium-sized firms? Okay, forgive me, but the reason that small and medium-sized firms and governments are coming in is because they're doing a better job, generally, than the companies who employ over 1,000 people. The greatest gaps that exist of consistent cultural best practice and strategic best practice about disability and business inclusion, the gap is in the big companies. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. And so our job is to get 500 of the organizations who are influential in the business world to transform the business system, because we believe that the exclusion crisis facing disability cannot be resolved without business being meaningfully at the table. And the only way we can do that is get the CEOs. So that's our rationale. I'm not saying that everybody has to agree with it, because we've already had approaches saying, can we do the Valuable 500 governments? Absolutely. Can we do the Valuable 500 plus for the small SMEs? Yes, absolutely. But let's get this community closed off first of these companies that we want to influence.
Excellent. So I think that's great. There is a follow on from that, and that is actually around what responsibility do governments have? Despite this being a business-led initiative, governments still have a responsibility towards accessibility. So there's some kind of interface. So what is the responsibility of government? And also, there was another comment, so I'm capturing three in one go, around, do we think that public sector or private sector is more advanced on accessibility right now?
Well, I tell you what, you guys are the best to tell me that. I'm never going to try and be an expert in something I'm not. You will probably tell me. What is the role of governments? Well, I can tell you, I'm Irish. You can hear my voice maybe. And through the pandemic, our Taoiseach, our Prime Minister, when they were making the State of Nation, addresses around COVID, I with some level of pride was, thank gosh, that we had the proper inclusive communication, which was interpreters and captioning. And that, I'm sorry, the fact that that I was delighted for that, rather than going, oh well, that's exactly as it should be. Governments need to. I mean, we say that business needs to reflect the society to which it operates in, yeah. But governments serve the society, and therefore they should be. It shouldn't be, oh well, it's a nice to have. It's an absolute essential. The governments reflect the societies to which they're communicating for, working with, and investing in. And I also believe that if we want to move this accessibility dial forward and inclusive dial forward, they need to do everything that they can to hold business to account and to support business in getting there. This is not a hands-off. This is together. And actually all the sectors, the policy and government, the business and the not-for-profit sector need to be working in collaboration together to move this dial forward.
Excellent. I think that's a really clear answer.
Sorry, I'm probably sounding very cross. I don't mean to.
No, you're not coming across as cross. I think it's passion and we need drive. We have another question which says, we got the buy-in at CEO level, but the rest of the C-suite wants to take a more measured approach. They're skeptical of the business benefit. This is reflecting what we've just talked about. So how can we as the accessibility leaders help broker that and approach that bureaucracy and sort of unblock the C-suite blockers? And I understand why there are these blockers. I've had to address them myself, and there are an awful lot of initiatives going on in an organization at any one time. Someone that is in a C-suite position is going to have lots of plates spinning, so it's really making, I think, them clear of the benefit to them and shaping what their contribution can be that fits in with what they're trying to do in the business, so that we're not loading them up again or working counter to what else they're trying to do in the business. I think
So
those are some of the things that we can proactively do, but are there other things that you've seen that also work to sort of melt what Fleur Bothwick at EY calls the permafrost of middle management?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Fleur's. So firstly, in the shadow and the light of a leader. End of. Leaders make choices and those choices create cultures. Not my quote, John Amachi. I steal it every time. If the leader, and this is why the Valuable 500 exists, one of the reasons, if the leader doesn't say, I care about this, then the rest of his or her C-suite is not going to give a hoot about it, because they want to shine in the shadow and the light of a leader, or in the light of a leader. So the first part from our perspective for phase 2, it's not the CEO who, I mean, it's the CEO's responsibility, but under each of those buckets, reporting and leadership and culture and brand, the CEO needs to give us access to the CMO, the CHRO, the CTO, everybody. It's so the CEO is making sure his C-suite team, his leadership team will deliver for her or for him to make sure that the work gets done. Because you're absolutely right, whoever's just said that. The CEO goes, yes, and then it goes to the CHRO and it gets shoved under the table. So the next phase of the Valuable 500 is trying to crack that for the CEO, for her team, to make sure that she has the support and backing of her C-suite. And I think that's really, really important, because I have unfortunately seen when a CEO leaves office and you think you have this Valuable 500 company, and then suddenly it's gone. And that's discretionary. And that's what bothers me, because discretionary is not strategic. And then the last piece that I'd say, once again, for your skill area and for the strategic level which you operate in, accessibility is not about disability. It's about everyone. And I think that is starting to land now. So when we take it just out of the box where it has been, tagged with for quite some time, disability and maybe stretched to age, it is now about everyone. So this isn't even a kind of, we have to make it just has to happen, like health and safety has to happen in a business. It is that simple.
Yeah. So I think there was a comment about McKinsey previously, where they haven't done disability as diversity, but they have done a lot on age, and there is this both crossover and disconnect between how businesses and analysts view the aging society and disability. If we live long enough, we'll all become disabled. It's as simple as that.
And that's true.
And we are all, for the most part, COVID aside, living longer. So this is going to happen to everyone. And when we have discussions, as my organisation, with public sector and governments, they're understanding this. They're understanding that they need to do stuff and plan for this. So as service providers, as companies providing stuff for consumers, who are the people that have the money? It's older people. They're much more likely to be disabled. Therefore, yes, it is a business driver. What we do need to do is make that mental connection for businesses between age and disability and business opportunity. And I think that there's some work to do there, but I think that is progressing somewhat. And I think that the work that you're doing and the work with the ratings agencies and a lot of the sort of marketing work, it feels very different now to how it felt 2 years ago.
Well, could I ask a question of everybody who's on this? So do you remember a long time ago, it feels like now, when we really started making business become accountable for the environment? And you could have said this is 10, 15 years ago, because, I'd be almost dreaming of the Valuable 500 for what feels like centuries at this point. But I believe the conversations at board levels or at executive levels of business, it was kind of like they were being dragged to the table or hoping that it would go away, right? And now we have to see that every business has a level of environmental conscientiousness. Or do you guys think that I think that's where we are with accessibility, that it's now dragging to the place that they go, we have to do it. But we're over that last sort of, you know, dragging the reluctant, you know, leaders to go, it's not going to go away. It's here. It is here, and it is, how are you going to deal with it? And that's what it feels to me. And that shows you that I'm 49 years old, and I watched the environmental business movement, which is still, we know the issue of environment is not resolved, but I'm just interested to know, is that a sense of what you all are starting to feel? Or am I just being a little bit too Pollyanna?
I can't read all of the comments too quickly, but what I can say from my own experience in a large organization where there was quite significant, shall we say, inertia. Let's be kind about this. There was inertia to engaging in these initiatives. That switch has been flipped now, right? And there is engagement. There's an understanding that it has to be done. And it's almost like watching people that hadn't engaged before suddenly roll their sleeves up is enormously gratifying. And I think that it's not just happening in my organization or in the Microsofts or the Salesforces, but there are more and more organizations, you know, taking those steps, recognizing that it is something that they can no longer pay lip service to and ignore, that, you know, there's legislative reasons for doing it, there's profitability reasons for doing it, there's you know, organizational cultural reasons for doing it, lots and lots of reasons, but it's become compelling, and they've realized that. On the other side of that, that's actually driving a different issue, which is a skills gap. And it's something that IAAP is here to help address, but there is a real shortage of skills in the people that can run these organizational programs, a bit like we had the real shortage of skills in people that could run sustainability programs 10 years ago. And actually finding people that have the right balance of both technical skills and the ability to navigate complex organizations, because these big organizations that are your members are very complex, is difficult. And even at a lower level, finding the technical skills to get the people to do the technical expert work is a challenge. So how can we engage with the wider community, both in education and you know, vocational training, to start bringing up these skills? Because some of it will require specialists, but we also need to do it in the wider education field. So is that something that CEOs can influence, or is it something that we need to go to our governmental partners?
Yeah, of course it is. Listen, did we not see this happen before when we started seeing the digital revolution happen? And you saw companies like the big Googles in this world and the big Microsoft in the world invest in the skills of countries and their education systems. I'm living in a small country. We have some of the biggest tech giants in the world, have very, very big premises and very big offices here for lots of reasons. And so therefore, that is a way in which they were able to say, well, look, this is a pool of talent. Do they have the skills and the training that we're going to need to give them jobs? And so, yes, absolutely. And this is my point. Listen, come on, who are the most powerful leaders on our planet right now? It's not politicians, right? We know that. The most powerful leaders on this planet are business leaders. To be honest, when they come together, they can actually make anything happen. And can I just say, accessibility, look, we know the technology is there, and we certainly know the intelligence is there and the desire is there for so much of this. The biggest opportunity and the biggest barrier to any of this is the 6 inches between our ears. That's about accessibility. It's the intention and the will to do this, and to see it, you know, as a long game, and to see the full pipeline. Neil, you're absolutely right. So if every business right now said, okay, this is it, front and center, we're going to invest in it, do they have the people to fill the positions? And do they have people coming up to fill the positions? I don't imagine they would. So it really is, the influence and the power is in the hands of business, and they do affect policy, and they do affect the UN. Look at UN Global Compact. You think about that. Yeah, they do have the chance to affect the education system and pipeline coming up, and they should be investing in that pipeline. That's where their philanthropy is, and many of them do that.
Okay, so question from Dan O'Mahony is saying he works in an industry where the conversation is still one around fear of lawsuits and compliance. Mm-hmm. How do we change the narrative to one of opportunity and quality and positivity.
Well, Dan, we need to find you. Who is your CEO's good friend? So who influences your CEO, her or him? Who is their influencer? We've got to find where they play and see. This is where the Valuable 500 has been able to help, because they won't listen to us so much. They will listen to their peers, and it's trying to nearly match up the reluctant leadership with maybe a more open leader. And with the Valuable 5, Neil knows this. This community is built up of companies and CEOs who are on all levels of their maturity journey. Some are absolutely in the baby stages. Some have done something and are scaling, and some are leading. And I think this is it. How can we bring your leadership into a safe community? Because that's what they want. They they know that they need to learn, but they don't want to have egg on their face. They really don't. Fear is what's stopping this. Of course it is. Their companies and individuals are very worried about being cancelled out. And the issue of accessibility is so close connected to disability. People are so worried of getting it wrong and causing offense. So it's trying to bring your leadership into a safe community, or trying to create, I hate this word buddy, but you know what I mean, is to give them a friend that can help them. Or in your case, Dan, is maybe showing them a competitor or somebody that the organization really admires that are doing a really good job. That's the way I would approach it. And I want to kind of go back to Neil's point as well. Listen, you in your field have the best skills of all. The thing that I would say is it's just really polishing up those persuasion, sales, relationship management skills, because as I say, it's not, we know this needs to be done, is how can we persuade and how can we ensure that the relationships are going to lead to the change?
Yeah. So I think I'm absolutely convinced that you need to practice your skills of persuasion. You absolutely, I'm 100% with you. You need to take the time, do the research to find out what it is that motivates your CEO.
Yeah. Follow the money.
Well, not just the money, but the passions. What are the other things they're interested in? Listen to what they're saying about the things they're doing, and then also observe who influences them. And there's a question from Rob as well, which is saying he's 4 rungs away from the CEO. What approach would you take to getting involved, right? To be able to advocate. Well, firstly, the stuff that we just talked about, but also maybe you go and find the person that influences them. Do you think that you have a better chance of having a conversation with their number 2 or their direct management team that can influence them and start building that relationship? I know that I had to go through multiple tiers of relationship building in my organization to be able to get to the point where I could go and directly talk with the CEO. And now we directly report to the board. And that did take time.
And not look like a threat to somebody else. And that's very, right.
Absolutely. You've got to frame it in a positive way. This is a mutual benefit. It's always got to be about mutual benefit. Risk reduction, you can talk about the penalties and the risk, but it's about doing this reduces the risk. It's a benefit to us as an organization. It also can be profitable. It makes us more usable, blah, 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 blah. But frame it in the language and wrap it in the topic that is important to that individual. And that might be different for the person in the leadership team that reports to the CEO than the CEO. But once you start having the conversation with that person, they can tell you what floats the boat of the CEO. And that's how you then start progressing those conversations.
I think we have to psychologically game it.
Yes.
That's how, everybody when we began the Valuable 500, they were like, there's not a hope in hell you're going to do this. And I'm like, yeah, we will. And it's been a lot of psychological gaming. And how we've done it is exactly as Neil said. If we couldn't get to the CEO, we got to somebody else's friend to the CEO, or we went up to somebody else in the business who had an invested interest in looking good in front of the CEO. It has been exhausting. I mean, it's rewarding, but it's psychological gaming for sure.
Yeah. It's definitely something that, it's a long game, and you have to be prepared for a few knockbacks along the road. That said, I think, as Caroline's previously stated, we're in a far better position at the beginning of 2021 than we were even midway through 2020.
Yes.
Things have changed. There's a recognition amongst leadership of humanity of their workforce, of vulnerability of their colleagues. There's the understanding of the need for flexibility. So businesses are having to invest in changes in infrastructure. Now is the time to strike. Now is the time to say, well, while you're doing this, make it accessible. We can help you be more effective. We can help you engage your employees remotely. All of these kind of things, listen to the language that's being talked and play it back to them with an accessibility message.
Yeah, I think the other thing I would say is don't underestimate the leaders of all of these businesses trying to just do the simple thing of going on these platforms. Just whether they have a visual impairment, a hearing impairment, a dexterity, which most of them don't, they're struggling. And for the first time that they're actually going, oh, ask them to take off their glasses and do it. Well, then you've got a whole other thing. So there's a sort of sense that there's a kind of an experience that our leaders maybe not have had to have before. And that's where you can fill that gap. That's the sweet spot. The Leonard Cohen quote, the cracks where the light gets in. Listen, there's a massive crack here. Go in with the confidence. Like, you have something to offer. And you don't have something just to offer as a quick fix, but you have something strategically to offer this business. And it has been proven because the businesses that had already invested in this were the businesses that thrived throughout COVID.
Yeah, we're coming towards the end of our allotted time. There's one final question I would like to ask, and that's from Mark Maguire, and that's, can board members also influence CEOs?
Oh, yes, you can. Mark Maguire, you sound like you're from Ireland. What I would say is board members are probably in one of the most unique positions, because many of us who have had the honor or frustration of sitting on boards, CEO, to deliver information that we want. So if you're a board member sitting on a board saying, where do we stand in accessibility? Have we done an accessibility audit? What is our performance around disability business inclusion? No CEO can tell you that you're not going to give you that information. That is a board member's right.
Yeah.
So yes, use it well.
Yeah, and I can absolutely tell you that our board do influence our CEO. It gets back to me that they've been asking questions. So if you happen to have a relationship, by all means, develop relationships with board members too.
Yes.
Find your path.
Very
it will
smart.
be different for each business, but absolutely, yes. If the board are interested in this topic, make use of it, because they absolutely will influence, your CEO.
Oh, can I actually just say, Mark, that is probably one of, can I take that from you? Because having sat on boards, if I ever get an email from anybody in a company as a board member, I have to bring that to the CEO, and I would. So that is, yeah, good play. Very good play. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're at the end of our hour. I think it's been great fun chatting, and I hope that everyone in the audience has found this useful. I hope that you'll join us on our journey towards strategic leadership.
Thank you, Neil and Caroline, for all that information today and that great discussion. We're going to try to capture some of the questions. I know there were some specific questions about the valuable 500 and about the 3 goals that were mentioned at the top of the discussion. So we'll try to capture those and create a question and answer follow-up sheet. And just as a reminder, our next session is next Thursday, and we have Kate Natch from Purple Space and David Caldwell from UK Home Office, and that is at 9 a.m. Eastern, 2 o'clock p.m. Growth Mountain Time next week. So we hope you'll join us again. And just as a final reminder for IAAP members, please continue the discussion in the connections community and in the community of practice. And if you're not a member, please check out our website at accessibilityassociation.org or email us at info@accessibilityassociation.org. We'll be happy to talk to you about membership and help you get engaged. Anyone wanted to also thank our interpreters today, as well as our captionists. And we'll send out some information about the recording, the Q&A, and how else you can get involved with IEEP. Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Christopher.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.